Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a lot of Fridays. The fun part about the show is that it's interactive. If you ask questions, we get you answers to those questions because our guests are world class. We've got the top CEOs. We've got best-selling authors. We've got people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can all learn from. And today is no exception. We're going to have a great conversation today about career transitions. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit from the conversations that we have and that we can grow our audience. Another side benefit of that. Now, you can comment and interact with us on not only on LinkedIn, but on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all at the same time. And that's because Social Live helps us do that. Now, I've got Michael Alan Tate today. He's an executive coach, career coach for more than 20 years. He is president and founder of On the Same Page Consulting. His first book was Design a Life That Works. His latest book, The White Shirt, is a career parable with tools to help you get ready to make a successful career move. He's got another book coming out in November. We're going to talk about that a little bit too.
All right.
And Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Rhett, thanks so much, man. I love your podcasts. I was talking about it before. I mean, your guests are just incredible. And I ask you, how did I slip in on this one after Elizabeth Gilbert and Roy Sutherland and all that? But thanks for having me. It's a thrill to be here.
Well, thank you. And again, I really think this is an important topic because, not unlike, earlier generations, my father's generation, and even really after that, people stayed in jobs a long time and typically, but today that's, for my kids and generations now, that's just not happening. And people are going to make multiple career moves. And I think having a strategy and a way to deal with those career moves, getting ready to make those moves, the prep that it takes to get ready to make a move, right? Unless you're forced to take it immediately, which happens.
It happens,
And the thought process to looking for what's right for you. So that's why I wanted to have you on. I think this is a really important conversation. So
well, thank you, Rhett. All right. Yeah.
What is for you? How do you get ready for a career move? I know that's a really open-ended question,
right?
But I think it's a big one. I mean, I think it's one that's the sort of the central question.
Sure. Well, it's everybody I talked to said I've been thinking about making this career move for 3 or 4 years. That's kind of the one thing, and I think sometimes you just have to take a bold step, kind of like Mel Robbins says in her 5-second rule. Make a step, but to prepare for that, I have kind of process in the book. The first thing you need to do is really take a look at why you're making the move. What is your motivation for doing it? Is it just getting more money, or is it really about satisfaction? What's the driver behind it first? Right. And then to look at what your skills and gifts and abilities are. And I have a kind of unique ways of doing that, which I found that worked actually. I work with many executives, but then they send their kids to me, of course, and they're in college, they don't know what they're doing. So I had to come up with some quick way to kind of get them out of my office and get on with what I was doing. And so what I did with them, I'd have them put together a family career tree. What were the careers in your family? And so I did that, and they would discover they have, we all have kind of a DNA. We have that kind of guides us. Our parents are the most influential in our career of anybody. Our peers' influence which is usually bad. Our profit is your influence. That's always bad. But your parents have a lot to do with career moves and decisions. And just to know that and be very aware of it, that can impact you. But you don't have to make that choice, but it's just there. But what I found was when you do that, and then I started work. I worked with a guy right after that. It was 65 years old. Was going to change and retire and doing something else. And I had him do the same thing. He had been in a career for his whole life, and he didn't know what to do. And he did his career tree, and he was in a nonprofit world. He found out that 5 or 6 of his relatives were in banking. Now he's a community developer for a bank. Just by simply looking back at that piece of you that's there, we all have these things that weave our careers together that are bigger than ourselves. But those two things are extremely important as far as beginning, and then, Alfred E. Newman, my great philosopher, once said that most people don't know what they want, but they're pretty sure they don't have it. And that's kind of the way this all works. And, to do a real career assessment of what your skills and gifts and abilities are and your interest in particular, we can look at because I believe there in about 10 years, there may not be any job titles anymore. I don't think they count now anyway. I think you need to be able to describe what your interests are, what your skills are, what your values are, and organizations will create positions to fit you because really job titles just don't. I mean, I tell people never talk about job titles when you're looking for work. Talk about your skills, your abilities, and those kinds of things. So that's a couple of things, Rhett. Yeah.
Yeah. What results you can get for the organization. Is there magic is it from when you first started in this field 20 years ago or longer to now, has the process for getting a job changed?
Well, the process for seeking a job has changed. The process for landing a job hasn't changed. Changed. Yeah, because the process for getting a job. There's the main point in my book, The White Shirt, is once you develop a plan for your career, not a resume first. It's like you're going to have a business, you're going to put together a plan, or you can put together a brochure. So we start with a plan. What's your plan, and what does that look like? And you ask people. Instead of going networking, but about job openings, you share the plan and ask for people's advice, not just something that's tangible so they can see it. And the whole book is built on this premise that if you ask for a job, you'll get advice. If you ask for advice, you'll get a career. And so it always has been that way. I mean, the mistakes people make are assuming there's actually a job hunting system out there. There is not. Indeed, and all these other things. It's just a bunch of hooey.
I don't know anybody's ever gotten a job from that.
No, just the people that got jobs with Indeed did. Really, that's how they hire their people, using that system. But assuming there's a job hunting system, there is no job hunting system. It's really, you have to have a plan, and you are the system. And if you just assume you'll put your resume in there, they'll find it. But if you do some homework, look into yourself, figure out what your gifts and skills are and your stories, and then you write out a little plan. And if you look at my own White Shirt website, I have sample plans for people, and they're one-page plan that says, here's my current situation, here are my gifts and skills, here are problems I love to solve. And on the right-hand side, you have a list of potential companies you might like to work for. And you show that to people and ask for advice. And as you and I both know, 85% of the jobs are never posted anywhere except in government, and people that have to, by requirement, they're usually filled once they're posted anyway, because they've got that taken care of.
They've got somebody in mind, right?
Yeah. And when I first, all this came from a crisis in my life when I lost my job. My drive for this, it was, had a good job. I love what I was doing, but it made me sick. I could not live with it. So I was lucky, left the job, and I went to a career counselor. And he gave me a couple of tests, said, you should be an HR director. He sent out 500 resumes by paper. That was years ago. I got one response.
Wow.
One. And I'm going, what's wrong with me? And then I realized there's nothing wrong with me. I just chose the world's worst way of finding a job. And that's when I said to myself, I'm going to do something so nobody has to go through this anymore. Because there is a simple, enjoyable way, because you look at a job search, either you're a job beggar or you're a research person. If you look at job search as research, it will lead you to openings and problems and challenges that people want to solve. And they usually don't even have a salary on them, so you get to work all that out too. So anyway.
Is there, talk about I think you just explained sort of your 24-hour process, right?
Yeah.
That you can actually help somebody get that kind of focus that quick with the process in the book.
Yes, in the book, in the book's actually designed. There's 7 steps in the book, and there's videos online that someone can go through. And there's a free workbook. It takes you through step by step how to put your plan together, and you can do it in set up for 7 days to do that. But the key to all this is, what's the one secret to finding your work? Do not do it alone. I mean, I'll be glad to help you, but I charge a lot, and but what I know is, if you have someone who's going through there's 85% of the people are dissatisfied. I bet you have a friend who's dissatisfied with their work. Buy the book, watch the video, work through it together. In 2 weeks, you'll both have a plan. You can support each other as you go through it. I mean, it's 2 are better than 1, because if one falls down, another is there to pick us up. Ecclesiastes tells us, and it's true. It's really having someone. I mean, it's not. I don't have all the answers. I mean, as a coach, as you know, that we're awfully more of a sounding board, reflection, and do have some expertise to support around that. But yeah, that's what I would. That's my recommendation, just to do that.
Are most jobs coming, you think, today? Because I know my experience on LinkedIn when I get coaching and other engagements, I know that a lot of it is coming from referrals. It's coming from friends. It's coming from contacts. It's coming from people that send me a note and say, "Hey, I think you'd be perfect for this. Let me do an introduction," or vice versa, right?
Right.
Do you think the online platforms like LinkedIn are really good ways to it's not the end all be all, but I think is a good way, you think, for looking for that next step, researching the companies, researching people who work there, and getting an idea if that's a place that you'd want to work?
Oh yes, LinkedIn's different. I mean, it's an information tool, and I work with people, and they have a good LinkedIn network, and I've had them send out a query to say, here's here's some organizations I'm looking at. Does anybody know anyone? And they'll get the information. And yeah, absolutely. But you just have to realize, that's it's a good way to gather information before you get there and be up to date. And people really want to help us. Most people. I tell people when they go to talk with someone for advice to be real careful not to stay all day, because nobody gets asked for their advice anymore, and just sit for 15 minutes and do that. But yeah, I have several people who've located good positions and actually understood the culture of the companies they want to work for using LinkedIn. Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you know if it's the right company?
Well, it's you never really know. It's like when somebody gets hired after they've been there a while. I do a lot of new leader assimilations, and I work with these people who come in, and after 30 days, I say, so which half didn't they tell you? But I do think if you look at the best places to work and those things, but really it's going to be your friends, people who share your values, that they tell you this company shares these values, and that's the best way. And of course, we all know it comes down to the boss you have, no matter what the company is. And that's why I think this, when you network in and ask friends, you're connecting with someone who knows someone who shares your values, and that's the way the kind of world works. But the process is the same. We just have technology now, and it's never been different than when I was doing it 20 years ago. We always could tell when I used to do outplacement. That is, like you said, congratulations, you're fired. Here's Mike. And I had to work with people, and I could always tell when someone was about to get a job. We had offices for these people, and we did all the correspondence and things for them. And when when they had sent out about 50 thank you notes, I knew they'd be getting a job offer in a couple of weeks. Thankfulness is the key to life and success, and just those things, being grateful and gracious, and conducting your job search and asking for advice as a humble, hat in your hand, servant leader. That's where it all is. And that's the hardest thing in job search, is getting our egos out of the way and asking for help. And that's kind of
my mother would love you, because you said thank you notes.
That's right. Yeah. A 2-line handwritten thank you note will change will make you a friend forever. Yep. And all this is people used to ask me when I worked for this gigantic consulting company what my job was, and I said I go out and make friends and ask them if they might want to do business with me sometime. And just so I know some people it's easier than others, but if you just look at going to someone, if someone came and asked you this, they came to you, Rhett, and said, "Do you know anybody that's hiring?" You're gonna, if you see them next time, well, you're going to the other side of the street because they asked you to do something you couldn't do. But right. They say, "Brett, I've got some companies. Would you look at these and tell me what you think? That's and who might be good for me to talk to?" Yeah. So it's just a gracious, polite, and that's uncommon in this world too, as well. And I do know, I know there's an epidemic with millennials. It's actually worse than it was in the early 90s, where over 40% have jobs making less than $30,000. And you ask me, and I have a picture when I speak on it, and I'll say, "You wonder why?" And I show a picture of 6 of them standing there with their fingers on they're texting. You do not get a job texting. I'm sorry, you don't. Maybe you will in 20 years when I'm not around, but I don't think so. So it's that person to person piece. Yeah.
The little things like the thank you notes, I think, are really critical.
Yeah.
Are there things that you can do today in an interview that you would recommend? Because I think that's another one of those skills that face to face, or people form opinions about you instantly. We can't help it. It's just, right. It is what it is. And are there things that people, I know one of my pet, I grew up, and you had to wear a coat and tie and right. You had to do all the right things and bring a copy of your resume and all that. And very traditional in a way, but are there things that you can do today that really give you a better shot?
One thing is leave your cell phone in the car, for sure. But
that's great advice. So you're not tempted, right?
Yeah, and check the company culture. So I worked with a guy who got a job years ago with Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
Okay.
And before he went, he had lost his job at Coca-Cola, and he was up to go to interview, and we did some research, and we said, if you wear a tie, they cut it off at the door and hang it on the wall. Khakis, no socks, button down shirt, you're good. And he got the job, and they were just amazed because he actually went to dinner with Ben in a 1964 Volkswagen bus. But it was just those. But the culture, everybody, and they had a whole wall of ties that they had cut off of people. So do some research and figure out. I always say dress a little bit better than who you're interviewing with. If it's there are some companies that are going back to ties. There are. So I would just do your homework. On that is the main thing. And, whoever you're interviewing, there's plenty of stuff on LinkedIn. You can come in and say, I saw what you have done with this book or article you wrote. If you start an interview like that, what can you say?
Yeah. I love that advice. I love do some research on the founder or the CEO, the person you're interviewing with, because more than likely they've posted something or written something or,
right.
That's very true.
Yeah, and everybody else comes in and says, "Now, what do you guys do?"
You do.
Just doing that. That kind of stuff just takes a little bit of time. But when you can say, "I've seen this," is people they know you care, and people hire people that care, and so those are a couple of tips. And have some good stories. Garrison Keillor used to say, who Garrison Keillor was, Prairie Home Companion. He had this thing. He said, to find a job, you don't need a resume. You don't need to get ready. Just be able to tell a good joke. So I don't know if that's, but telling stories is the truth. When someone asks you a question, interview, what are your strengths or weaknesses? Don't answer that question. Say, there's this time I did this. and I had this thing I used to do, and I've learned to do that. Is that the kind of thing you won't tell a story? Because when I was doing outplacement, we actually had one guy who came, he had interviewed at a whole bunch of places, and he had, this company called and said, we like this guy, we just can't find his resume, we lost it. And we said, well, tell us about him. And they said, we look like this. And he said, but he told this story.
Mm-hmm.
And when he told that, we knew who it was. And they had lost that because people never forget stories. So practice storytelling. And I also instruct people to draw if they can when they're in an interview. If there's a flip chart or something there, say, do you mind if I stand up and just draw 3 circles on the flip chart and say, you may not want to hire me, but if you're going to hire anybody for this job, they need to be able to address these 3 things. And then just all of a sudden they start talking about those things and assume you can do them. And, it's just story, somebody said that leaders are masters of symbols and stories, and that's what people want to see. So those are just some tips and ideas I'd throw out for people once you get in the door. Getting in the door is the hardest part. Yeah.
That's prompts 2 questions. You kind of hit on it. Role playing is a really good idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting people to ask you questions so that you can practice what you're interviewing for, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
So that seems to me to be a smart thing to do. And then you just sort of talked about a little bit, the getting in the door. Is there some magic to a resume or a CV or, we talked about networking a little bit and getting in the door that way. Are there some other ways that help you get that interview?
Well, the interview to me, comes from your networking, from people to refer you in to people to talk to. And, but as far as getting in the door, here's the picture. Instead of a job hunting system, just picture there's a group of people sitting around a table every week, and they're sitting there and they're looking at the future saying, we got this problem coming at us, or we got this thing we got to solve. And they turn to each other, and you've been there, and they say, do you know anybody who could do that? Mm-hmm. They always do. And, and they say, well, we don't want to go through HR because it takes so long. We don't want to use recruiters. And then if you've done your homework and you've been out there networking with people and sharing your story and sharing your things, the picture is somebody at that table say, I talked to this guy. He didn't have a resume. He just had a plan. He showed it to me, and I think we ought to talk with him, because that's the key to that. And if you got to write a resume, I would tell you at the top of the resume, describe the environment that you excel in. That's what I tell people. What's my objective? My objective is to work in a place where I can use my skills to solve these kind of problems and this kind of environment. That's what I have people put on the tops of resumes now to do that. So
that makes sense. Are there other key elements that have to be in that resume today?
As long as it's on one page is all I tell everyone. You can have one page in an appendix, but in your appendix should be interesting things about you. So I had a young guy was in college, and he'd been wanting to work for this company, and he had a resume. It's like 2 or 3 pages. So we shortened it to 1 page, and he was a voracious reader. He had written probably 100 business books. So I had him, the second page, a list of the 50 business books I've read.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, and if you climb mountains, if you put a picture of you in your sailboat or your plane, just something that then when they turn the page, they've got something interesting about you besides just your history. And so that's just to me, that's what people want. It gives them something to talk about. So it gives people something to talk about. So I always attach that. And when you do that, of course, HR doesn't know what to do with any of that stuff. That's why you need to avoid HR at all possible, as long as you possibly can, because their job is to screen you out, and that's how they get rewarded for do that. And most of the time, they really don't know a lot about the job as much as the managers do. So, or sometimes as much as the administrative assistants do at the companies. And I mean, if you ever get a reference to talk to an administrative assistant of someone, never pass it up because you'll get the answers and you'll get connected to the people in the companies that you want. Yeah.
I remember in college, I was on the sailing team, and I remember going in. I can't remember the name of the company, but I remember going in for an interview, and the manager that was interviewing me was a sailor, right? And he asked me about
oh man,
and an hour later, there wasn't a single question about the job or what the responsibilities were, or about it was, what, God, we've been talking for an hour. We've got to go. When can you start?
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. If you put some things on there about you,
yeah,
you never know where you're going to make those connections,
right.
And how that's going to impact. I think it leads to jobs all the time, right? When people find some commonality, common hobbies, common interest, people want to work with people that they identify with.
Yeah, people like to work with people they like, and So and the other thing, one more thing about if you're interviewing, do some research on the marketplace and the mission of the company, and be able to talk about the values and the mission and what you've learned about the company. If you do that, you're light years ahead of everyone else. And if you've interviewed other places, I mean, if you really do this research right with your job search, by the time you get to an interview and you've talked to 6 or 7 people about the companies that you're looking at, you'll have market information they don't even know. You can say, in my research of doing this, I've discovered these are some needs that are out there and some things that there, and that's when you draw the 3 circles on the wall and put them up there. And so just, be prepared. I hate to go back to the old Boy Scout deal, but most of us don't find a job because you can't be lazy and find a job. So it's not going to come chasing you. Yeah, you just got to go after it. So,
do you think that there's age bias? I mean, do you think that in today's workplace that it's harder for people over 50 to sort of make a transition in a job?
Yeah. Well, my answer is this: there are 2 times. If you're over 50 or 60, you're too old, you're too young, you have too much education, not enough education. There are 2 kind of people out there: the ones who hold it against you and the ones who won't. And all you need is the one who won't. And, I mean, I know some companies that would hire anybody over 50 and they wouldn't hire anybody under 50. So, I mean, everybody has that. But, people say, well, I'm too old. And I'm going, there's people who hold that against you. And some people think it's an asset, and part of that's how you present it. But sure. I mean, there's always biases like that on folks. But I see it leaning more sometimes to the over 50 and 60s now. But it's all in. If you've done your homework and you come in there and show them you've done, who they are, what you've done. And if they've got a bias like that, then you'll never change their mind. I just you just need to find another person. You're wrong interviewer. Find the next one. And, there's, because we all have a place, I believe we are all created unique. We all have a place we're supposed to be in this world. And if you just slow down, figure out who you are, go share it with some people and ask for their advice, you'll find a perfect fit quicker than you ever thought you would. Remember, ask for a job, you'll get advice. Ask for advice, you'll find a career. So, is there
some strategies? I'm curious about, also internal opportunities, right? How do you, because I think sometimes we're afraid to tell our employer what we want.
Yeah. And the book covers that as well. Matter of fact, I was at a big consulting firm, and I'm not a very good employee. That's why I've been in business so long. And but I got about every 3 years I get really bored. So I got really bored, and so I did what I teach them. I wrote a plan. I wrote a plan of what I wanted to do on a sheet of paper, and I listed other departments I thought I might want to work in, and I wrote what I like to do. And I never even shared it with anybody in the company because I wasn't sure it wasn't that great of a culture. And
right.
But I shared it with a friend of mine. And I can't explain this, Rhett. 3 months later, the whole company shifted, and that thing I had described was created. Because I call it God, call it providence, call it clarity, whatever it is. I was so clear what that was. And I worked there for another year or so because they created that. But I work with people now inside companies and they're going to leave. And I say, let's look inside first. I help them put together a plan that says, I might like to work in the marketing department. These are my skills. My plan says that. In the marketing department, I have questions about engineering or whatever. And you go show that to your boss and say, I'd like to move here. And I've been thinking about that. Who do you think and who else in this company would be good for me to talk to? And if you got the right culture, it works. Some aren't, but today, if you're a valuable employee, they'll do anything to keep you. And if you sit there and are frustrated, I always tell people when you're frustrated, you have three choices. You can stay frustrated, you can quit, or you can make a request. Make a request.
I think what you just said is really, 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 really important. And it's something that I remember when I ran my toy company, in the ups and downs of that, there were times we'd have to lay people off. There were times that we have to hire people.
Yeah.
But there were people that no matter what happened, I was taking those people along with me to the very end, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so how do you become you've hit on it a couple times. How do you become that valuable person that they'll make a job for you in another department if that's what you want to do?
Well, there's two characteristics that I've found that in the right company that's what happens, and that is, I think about myself when I was young. I was a little arrogant and proud because I kind of figured I had everything figured out. But what I've noticed, the two characteristics
that age.
The secret is exactly like that. What works in job search works in life, and that is thankfulness, humility balanced with confidence. Those are the people you had that were confident, they would speak to the truth, but they were humble. So humble, confidence, when you can display those characters,
and reliable.
Yeah. Showing up, doing your homework. Everything you learn to do in a job search, if you do that at work. And Richard Bowles, I don't know if you know What Color's Your Parachute?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He was my mentor. And Richard would say to me, remind people, Mike, that what works in job search works in life. Learn how to do a job search. You'll learn how to live and you'll learn how to lead. And he was an amazing mind. He taught me everything I know. My little book is actually What Color's Your Parachute, which is 700 pages. Dick died last year, but the white shirt is the What Color's Your Parachute in 150 pages. This is the essence of his three questions, which is, who am I? Where's my place in the world? And how do I find it? Those are the three questions in the parachute book, three questions in my book. Who am I first? Where's my place in the world? And find it by asking for advice. So that's kind of wraps it up there for me.
Yep, you can't sum it up any better.
But
you have a copy of the book. You have a copy so people can see it.
Oh yeah,
I love props. So we got to show the cover. There we go.
Yeah. See, it's how thin it is, and it says on the back, 1 hour and 10-minute read. It's an airplane book. It's also Audible, Kindle, all that kind of stuff too. And then I have another book coming out in November, right after the elections. It's called Roll Up Your Sleeves, Leading and Living in a World of Constant Change. It's another parable, but it talks about there's a difference between change and transition. People confuse those or say they're the same thing. They are not. Change is what happens to you. Transitions are the emotional stages you go through after change hits. And then in work, a manager can make a decision to change. Only a leader can lead people through the emotions of getting back to their, or as I would take my parable in the books is based on the Exodus story of getting to the promised land through the wilderness and running those emotions through that. So that's my book coming out. That's my next one coming out. And I also have my own podcast. I don't know if you knew this, Rhett. It's called Small Time Leaders, and it's a 10-minute podcast. And I have people in 10 minutes tell about two people that were leaders in their life that did a small thing that changed the way they live and work. And it comes every Tuesday and Thursday out. And I just started in January. I think I have 9 episodes, so I'm like 5,000 behind you. But
well, that sounds like a great topic. That's perfect.
And so I'll call you. You can be on my podcast. Why don't you?
I'd love to be. I'm happy to.
That'd be great. And if for any of the listeners who want to go to whiteshirtbook.com, which is my book, whiteshirtbook.com, there's a free workbook there that you can download in free videos. You can learn all about the process. And, Richard Bowles helped me a lot. And I asked him how I could repay him. He just let me come and work with him. He said, Mike, give it away. So, I do have to charge something for my book, but I try to give people something they can take and help them make their move. And by the way, if you can't afford a book, just email me. I'll send you a free one. Don't Matter of fact, when I speak, I put my books at the back of the room. I say, pick one up. If you want to pay for it, you can go online and pay for it. If not, it's yours to keep, because, we all need to do something to help people in the world. And this is my chance to do that. So. Yeah.
That is amazing, Michael. That really is. That's fantastic. So you heard him. Go get a copy, and then once you get that copy, pass it on to somebody else that it can help.
No, buy 2 copies. This is the only career book ever written to be done with a friend. It literally, I told you 2 are better than 1. If you do it by yourself, it'll take you twice as long, and you'll get real do it with a friend, and if you don't have to buy 2, there's workbooks, but always.
Nice thing about doing it with a friend, though, is that accountability, right?
That's what it is.
Yep. Account and that.
Yep.
I like that.
You got it, man.
Yeah, I like that. Go out, get the book. It's called The White Shirt. And it is, I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. It's really going to help you in making and preparing for that successful career move. We've got a great schedule coming up on Power Lunch Live this week and next. We've got Jim Oliver tomorrow. I've got best-selling author Maria Ross, New York Times best-selling Ruth Suckup on also next week. Great calendar coming up. And so go to the website if you want to look at the schedule coming up in March. It's powerlunch.live. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. Before we go, one thing I do want to mention is we do conferences. We go to live events. We go to expos and trade shows and that kind of thing. If you want us to come and do LinkedIn Live and Power Lunch Live from your event, please do be in touch. We're going to Spain in June, I think. We just got back from San Diego. We were in Luxembourg the month before. So we do take the show on the road occasionally. So reach out and we'll be at Webbit in Spain. That's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for spending some time with us today. Have a great day. Go out and do good work, and we'll see you tomorrow.